Okay, they're here. Don't say any of that shit we were saying before. Just
Okay, I'll stop talking about that stuff.
yeah, be cool. Be cool. Be cool,
I'm
Megan.
just gonna be cool until we go live. Oh, are we live? Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
we're
yeah. I think yeah.
we're live already.
Oh my God. Fellowship, I'm so grateful to have you all here today, except that this says zero up in the corner. What's that about? Where are you whores at? Get on the live. It's time for the Church of Korihor to assemble. Now we're talking. That's right. Okay, here we go. Eleanor, thank you very much for being here. Okay, cool. So
Hi, Eleanor.
We have a great show for you guys tonight. We're dual broadcasting on at Third Dash Verse, which is Megan Connor's channel, and here at Hellfire Agency, which is what we're still calling the Church of Korihor's channel for the time being. We're here to talk with a topic that we've talked about a few times, right, Megan?
Yeah, we have talked about this a couple of times on some of our Latter Daily Digest collabs.
Yeah, we're kind of old salts on how to do the Gene Jetson show. But we connected even just a couple days before you caught one of my godless sermon yesterday at the Church of Korihor. It had very nice things to say about that, and I want to thank you personally for having said such nice things about it, because I really was glad to see that that you got a lot out of it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it to all of my channel members who are coming in. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm actually Joe's guest this evening, but we're live streaming dually to my channel as well. So thanks for being here. And Joe has a wonderful godless sermon that he preaches on Sundays, and I happened to catch it this last Sunday and really enjoyed it. It was, the first time I had been to any sort of an organized church meeting in a really long time, and I didn't really know what to expect, except that I've seen your promos and I've seen clips of it and things like that. So I was really happy to witness the discussion and to be a part of it. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for that. And if those of you who are at the Fellowship or Hellfire Agency, you guys got to know Megan Connor. You know, she's known for like the darkest of things, of topics out there. And she's a very, very intelligent woman, and she's got a lot of interesting things. And to say, and we've had long conversations into the night after even after our broadcast with Gene's show get turned off, and it's like we linger on. It's like we're gonna talk, man.
Yeah, we'll finish Gene's show at around 11 or so Central Time, 10 o'clock your time. And I have been, I don't know, it's been midnight, 1 a.m. sometimes before we finally jump off, because we, when you get a bunch of, a group of people together that have had some really similar difficult experiences, we tend to have a lot to say. And also, that shared experience creates a lot of dark humor, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say that's about right. But it's a trauma bonding thing, right? I mean, that's basically what goes on. You get a bunch of ex-Mormons together. We're going to trauma bond, which is actually kind of what we're talking about here. There's tears shed in these little get-togethers, which is not uncommon in ex-Mormon gatherings. You're a fairly recent Exmo. I mean, officially, aren't you, Megan? You were physically and mentally out for how long?
I was PMO since, probably 2017. It's hard for me to put a pin on exactly the time when my doubts really overwhelmed my ability to enjoy church, but it probably started in 2015 with the exclusion policy. That was sort of the beginning of the end, and things just kind of got worse from there. But I didn't officially resign my membership until 2023. So I'm fairly recent to the official Exmo space. And February 14th is actually my Independence Day for more than one reason. It's the day in 2017 that I ended my 22-year marriage. And it's the day that I turned in my resignation papers in 2023 from the Mormon Church.
Wow, good for you, man. Man, you really come around. You've made quite the journey.
It's been a
I might,
journey.
yeah. I have. I was 10 years Jack Mormon, or ex-Mormon unofficially, before
Hmm.
I was excommunicated, and that's in
Mm.
August, my anniversary. I don't remember the exact date, August 13th. And no, I don't know. It might be the 11th. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, there's this long journey that we go through. I don't know. Did you ever do any meetings like ex-Mormon meetings, post-Mormon gatherings out there where you are when you left?
When I first left, I did have a real desire to connect with other people who had similar experiences. And so I did, I logged on to the Thrive broadcast that they were doing online one time. And that was kind of, I don't know. I mean, it was great to be on there. It was great to hear everybody's experience. It was great to sort of like trauma dump for a minute. And for
Hmm.
whatever reason, I never went back. It wasn't because it was a bad experience. I actually really enjoyed it. I loved the people who were hosting it. It
Yeah.
felt really good to connect in that way. But I think the rest of my deconstruction, I did, mostly privately, but then obviously started talking online about it a lot more. So
Yeah. Was that in Texas?
it was online. So I think the people
Oh,
hosting it were in Utah. Yeah.
yeah, probably, especially if it was Thrive. I think most of their people are out here.
Yeah, and
That,
actually there is a Thrive, chapter member, whatever that is here in San Antonio, and they have a Facebook group which I belong to, and I have many times meant to go to their gatherings, their get-togethers, whatever, and for whatever reason just didn't work out schedule-wise until they went to go see Heretic. So that was my
oh
first
my gosh,
time showing up to the San
how
Antonio
fun!
Expo group.
How fun! Oh,
Yeah.
that's so fun. Yeah, out here in Utah, we used to have these meetings called CALM, Community
Mm,
After Leaving Mormonism.
mm.
And I went to a grand total maybe 4 or 5. I enjoyed them, but, like, you didn't see repeat people, and that's the interesting thing that I started to realize. I'm like, "This is almost like a ritual. This is like a ceremony." People come out to this, they experience it, they're like, "Okay, I'm not alone," and then they give up
Yeah.
on it. They're like, if I don't wanna go to church, I don't wanna go to non-church either," you know? So, it's almost like a rite of passage for, you get out there, tell somebody your story, get it off your chest, probably cry a little bit, and then you're kind of done. And
Yeah.
so I thought, it's almost like there are these rituals that we have to pass through.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, and I've been talking about rituals for the Church of Korihor. Those of you who don't know, Church of Korihor is a church for godless people. We just started out in 2024 in December, and we are already taking converts at korihor.org. People are doing our first sacrament, the Oath of Reason. And just yesterday, I introduced that we're going to start a new sacrament that we're going to call Overview, which drew me and Megan a little bit closer with a shared
Yeah.
love we didn't know we had for Carl Sagan, right? I
Yes.
mean, we
Yeah.
listened to the Pale Blue Dot yesterday on the broadcast, and I was like, "Oh man, I like Megan even better when you talked about how it made a huge difference for you listening to Carl talking about or reading the Pale Blue Dot." Did you read the book, The Pale Blue Dot?
I read parts of it, but I did see Cosmos on Netflix. It was
Mm.
at a time when I was like really, really sick. And I was, kind of getting down to the bottom of my watch later list on Netflix, and I
Yeah, yeah.
realized that I had marked it. And every time I started to watch it, I was like, this is going to be heavy and I don't know if I'm ready for it. But I was sick and I was, down at the bottom of the barrel and I was like, well, I might as well. And sure enough, I ended up just weeping the whole time that I was watching it because it
Wow.
resonated so deeply with me. And it was another one of those things that, like, I don't know, astronomy, astrological, connection is not really, it's sort of frowned on in the Mormon church, right? Because,
Wow.
there's those beliefs are considered to be kind of woo and spacey. And I've always had a very deep connection to astrological phenomena. In fact, one of my daughters is named Cassie after the Cassiopeia, phenomenon in space. And I've always told my kids, I love you to the sun and the moon and the stars and back. Like it's always been sort of there in my mind. And what we were talking about with the ritual you suggested is actually a meditation that I do on a really regular basis of just like zooming out and seeing myself above and away from my home, from my town, from my state, from my country, and then from the entire world. And just visualizing the connection that I have with stardust and, how that, and I think we talked about how I believe that connects us all as human beings.
I love that. I love that because it certainly does. I mean, it's like Jenny Gage, she was second herald in our church. She contacted me one day and she said, Joe, I'm getting a lot of people interested in the Church of Korihor, but they're asking me, do you guys do anything like spiritual? And I was like, well, did you point them to like our godless sermons? Yeah. And she's like, and I'm like, did you tell them about the whole theory of Korihor and the legend of Korihor? Yeah. And I was like, okay. She's like, need something small, something bite-sizable. And so we did this thing called the Light of Reason. What is the Light of Reason at one of our godless sermons? And suddenly there's all this interest. And boy, this is why when I started this, I didn't realize how quickly I would learn listening to women would transform everything about everything that I was doing. It's like women provide the thinking that I can't come up with. And including trans women, have educated me so much on these things. And so even listening to my wife, like, I know I just said that like it's a thing I'd never done before.
Joe, you listen to your wife?
What? I mean, when I have to. She's not always right. Don't tell her I said that. Please don't. But no, she had said to me once, she was listening to our first hymn. Our first two hymns were our summer solstice song, the one about Carl Sagan and Sir Isaac Newton. You remember hearing that yesterday.
Yeah.
And then O Korihor, which was written to the tune of How Great Thou Art. And she said, aren't you going to make any songs that sound like songs? I'm like, these don't sound like songs? And she's like, no, like fun songs to listen to. I was like, oh, I could make like a pop song. And she's like, yeah. I was joking, but she was not. And I was like, I mean, I could do that. And so I made a pop song called Lick My Cupcake, which is about the trauma. You've heard Lick My Cupcake? And it's about the trauma that especially women experience growing up in the church. And can I tell you, that song was written by artificial intelligence. I gave it the prompts, and AI wrote it. And I have women at every broadcast that I play it telling me how much healing they did in the song that's written by a computer. And but it was just taking this thing and making light of it, this very deep core sacred shame that so many women experience when they're young. It is a healing experience just to be able to say, take it back. Do you find
for those of you? Sorry, just for those of my audience members who are not, Mormon, never been Mormon, this is a reference to in the Young Women's Organization, when you're between the ages of 12 and 18, there's a lot of discussion about sexual purity, its purity culture, modesty culture. And one of the lessons that I remember receiving more than once was about keeping yourself modest and keeping yourself pure by not engaging in like too much kissing, too much touching. And they said if you did too much of that stuff, that you were going to be like a licked cupcake and nobody would want to marry you. Like nobody worthy would want to marry you. And some of you may have heard Elizabeth Smart talk about feeling like a chewed up piece of gum. That comes directly from Mormon teachings for young women about keeping yourself pure in a dating relationship.
Yep. about keeping the law of chastity, and you'll hear people even still in the church, men, talking about the little factory talk. I've talked
Yeah.
about it ad nauseum, so probably people have heard it, but it's basically the same thing over on the young priesthood holder side of the world. You know, it's like
Right.
don't jerk off
Don't
because
activate your little factory.
that's right. Let God pull your relief valve for you in the middle of the night, which was another kind of kinky. I just don't understand they put that in our brains. But like in my case, I had this thing where, and I've talked about this before, that like when I was a kid, I thought I was going to become the next Ted Bundy because they had us watch the last interview that Ted Bundy did with James C. Dobson, where he's basically like, if you have HBO in your home, or you look at the Good Housekeeping magazines on the shelves on the racks as your mom's checking out her groceries, you're on your way to being the next Ted Bundy. But of course, he was saying that because he wanted a pardon, or he wanted not pardon, but a stay of execution.
Well, not only that, but let's just all say that in the mind of a psychopath, right? Accusation is confession. And so if a psychopath tells you, don't watch porn because that's going to turn you into a serial killer, he's basically saying that was his problem. That's what it did to him. Like, that's where he got some of his depraved ideas. It doesn't mean it's bad for, people who don't have a proclivity towards psychopathy.
Right.
But I absolutely, I took that to heart because that was taught to me in Sunday school. We watched that video as part of our standards night, which talk about traumatizing, to go into a church building and to have the church leaders play a video of a serial killer talking about his depravity coming about because of watching porn, and it scared us straight. It was like, okay, well, I promise I won't ever watch it. It was traumatizing.
Right. And what's interesting is that, now they're doing something similar. I've been fighting against this. And 2 godless sermons ago, I talked about an organization based out of here in Utah called Fight the New Drug, which if you know about these guys, they're connected into the Visions of Glory camp, and not to get us distracted on something very well.
Are they led by Tom Harrison by any chance?
They're basically, yes. Like in the famous, you of course have seen many times, I'm sure, that layout of the speakers at the Eternal Core conference.
Yep.
Those of you, yeah. So there's basically in the middle of that, there is Tom Harrison, the author of Visions of Glory, and then you've got Tim Ballard.
And then
and then right next to him, you got Clay Olson, the founder of Fight the New Drug, where they basically go into public schools sponsored by organizations. They're paid by organizations here in Utah that donate to our public schools, which is an interesting conundrum, and pay lots of money to these local school districts. And then they go in and they do like these revivals where they have kids like 10, 11, 12 years old get up in front of their peers and start crying and testifying about how they have been looking at bad sites on the internet. And then they win a t-shirt that says "Porn Kills Love." And it's like, and they get to wear that and be a billboard for this organization. And I'm like, to children, I mean, it's like they have reached it into the public school system. Yeah. I mean, even that chewing gum thing that I've already forgotten. What's her name?
Elizabeth Smart.
Elizabeth Smart. Talking about when she talked about this, she said that she heard that at school. Now I thought surely she means Sunday school or maybe seminary. But now I'm beginning to realize, I mean, it could be. But then now, ever since this Fight the New Drug thing, I can't help but say, this could have been. She could have heard this at school, at public school.
Oh, at a public school, yeah.
I mean, it's like, so, I mean, basically we have all this trauma. Sometimes when you are new to the ex-Mormon experience, you need to go through a kind of a ceremony to that where you can like kind of release it. Yeah. And so we've talked about, there's all these things that we have done. I personally, I've talked a little bit about this yesterday. I've talked about multiple times about how I did a psilocybin trip where I met my inner child. But that was 20 years after leaving the church. and well over 30 years since my trauma started to really get bad really got bad as an 11-year-old boy. I'm well, yeah, a little more than 30 years now. But the interesting thing for me is that when I did these calm meetings, how many women would be at these meetings and they would say, we're in the security of a closed group with people, strangers, but with a trust where it's like, everybody, we're going to respect the space. People are going to get emotional. They're going to share some private and intimate things. I was surprised, though, how many times in these meetings women would say, I don't know how to shop for a bra. And it's like, you'd be a 40-year-old, 50-year-old woman and confess to a room full of people you just met, I don't know how to shop for a bra because I've been wearing these ugly, not sexy undergarments underneath my bras for 30 years. And I mean, let's face it, most women, their bras don't fit right anyways.
Right.
And if you're going to go and get fitted for one, I actually talked to a woman who does bra fitting parties. Have you ever seen these or been to one of these?
I haven't been to one, but I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I asked her, I said, what's the difference between what you do and what the girl does over at the Victoria's Secret? And she says, oh gosh, don't even talk to me about those Victoria's Secret fittings. And she's like, you'll get some 21-year-old, associate manager at Victoria's Secret. She's like 100 pounds soaking wet, never bought a custom bra in her life and won't even tell you to take your top off. Let alone, she's like, I've heard so many women say that she measured my bust. It didn't even, I still had my bra on. And it's like, you're not going to get anything out of that. And I said, so what's the key? And she's like, get up in there. You just pull her aside and say, hey, you and I are going to be best gal pals. And we're about to get super intimate because I'm about to second base all over you. And it's like, do it. And it's like, now you got it. Okay. Get that consent and then just get in there and get at it. And so I'm looking at this, I'm like, it's almost like a ceremony for women leaving the church is going and buying underwear. Like for me as a man, I don't get that. It's like, it was kind of a thing for me. It's like, throw these away and go get myself a pair of boxer shorts. It's like, oh, I remember this from back when I was a teenager and just wore boxers as underwear. And it was good. But for women, it's about reclaiming their femininity, it's about so much more than sex is the thing that I learned from these meetings. It's about reclaiming everything you wear, because now a suit fits better, a blazer fits better, a dress fits better,
everything fits better.
Right.
And it's the thing that's difficult for women especially is that, well, I guess it's really similar for men too, because in a religion where you're not allowed to have any sort of sexuality at all until you're married. It's like deny the fact that you even have a sexuality until you get married, and then boom, flip a light switch and procreate. And it's supposed to work perfectly, right? So Mormonism teaches us to disconnect from our bodies because we have to pretend that we don't have these feelings. And we also get shamed when we do have them. So then our bodies become shameful. And for women, when we're shamed as far as modesty, what we're wearing, and we're told all the time that we need to cover ourselves up so that we don't tempt the men. It teaches us to be ashamed of what we are inherently in our bodies. And then when you add garments on top of that, the temple garments always made me feel terrible about my body because it made me feel like I have to cover it up all the time, no matter what. It was like what I was told. It's really interesting. When I went into, to the temple for the first time, and I'm there in the room with the temple matron and my mother and my sister, who have both been through the temple already. And I, of course, know that they wear garments and they've been through the whole temple thing. And so, the temple matron kind of gives me a, her little spiel or whatever. And, the only thing I could think to ask when she asked if I had any questions was that I was like, well, I've heard lots of different things about how you're supposed to dispose of garments, and I don't really know what's right. And she said, well, I can't really tell you either, because I think everybody kind of just does it differently. I think the main thing is just to be respectful of these sacred garments and don't do anything that would, desecrate them in any way. And I was thinking to myself, well, there are literally shit stains in them. So I can't think of a better way to desecrate. Like, this is going through my head as I'm talking. I'm like, okay, so I know that my parents would cut the markings out and then throw them in the trash. I also knew that my grandparents used to burn them when they were done with them. And so I was like, and then also I had an aunt who like cut them up into dusting rags. And I was like, really, is that okay for you to do that? And she was like, well, if you take the sacred markings out of them, then they're not sacred anymore. I just remember being so confused by that. But I thought the whole time I was just thinking to myself, this is supposed to be a comfort and a protection, is how they sell it to you in the temple. And I just remember thinking, it makes me feel gross. It makes my body feel disgusting. And at the time, I was married to a non-member. And the special counsel that the temple matron gave me was that you are not to answer any questions about the temple garment outside of the temple. So if your husband asks, you just have to tell him, I can't share that with you because you haven't gone through the temple. And she said, maybe that'll give him some incentive to take you to the temple, to come into the temple with you. And I remember thinking like how messed up that was, but I bought it because I was all in. I was like, I'm going to do all the things because I want all the blessings. I need all the blessings because I'm in all these terrible situations. I can't afford to not follow everything to the letter of the law. But I just remember feeling I think I've expressed before that when I finally resigned from the church, I felt the shame leave my body. And it's taken me a really long time to continue that journey of removing the shame from my body and from my sexuality and from, all of that. But wearing regular underwear, yeah, it was like a rite of passage. I had a few pairs that I would keep for like working out or like, working in the yard or whatever. But they were, gross, ugly ones because I didn't know any better. But yeah, it was great. It was great to go out and actually like be a real human being and be able to make those choices for myself. It seems so ridiculous thinking about it now that I literally let some nonagenarians in Salt Lake dictate what underwear I wore.
Right. And men no less. Yeah. So it's like there are a series of different ceremonies, I think, that could be like in the Church of Korihor. We've talked for a while about we're going to need some of these that are tailored to ex-Mormons, but we're going to need some that are tailored to ex-evangelicals, and and we're going to need some that are for ex-Muslims and ex-Jews, because we're recruiting a lot of the people that are coming to the Church of Korihor are going to be people who are from faith. And, so like, it seems almost like, the more we look into how to do rituals in the Church of Korihor is the more that we realize each one's going to have to be customized, because we only recruit adults. And so we only bring people into the church. We don't believe that religion is for children. We don't believe that church is for children, though we do plan to have ministries where kids can like enjoy. One of our values is room to play. Have kids, have time to be kids and to enjoy in a safe environment, learn constructive things. We've talked, for example, about like, it would be great to have like shooting events where we go out shooting with like teenagers and teach them gun safety and, and things like that. It's like, that's something that I got in Boy Scouts. That was one of the few things that was actually good about Boy Scouts. Pretty much everything else was traumatizing. So it's like, we can take this, we can do this all better. But I was like, then I got to the point of saying, well, a lot of people who do a lot of inner healing work, like inner child healing work, like I have done, use psychedelics. And now we're getting into this murky area. There are organizations like Divine Assembly where they combine the use of psychedelics that you provide yourself, but that you can do them in a group and do them with friends and do them, and they're like sacraments. And I'm like, do we go that far? Do we need like some kind of ceremony where it's on the gray area on the side of in terms of the law? And I still don't know the answer to that question. But I do know that loving kindness meditation, which in Buddhism is metta, can be very transformative. And I talked yesterday about how Sam Harris turned me on to this, that they're discovering that some of the symptoms of autism can actually be treated with what's known as loving kindness meditation or compassionate meditation. So
Yeah.
that's what we've been talking about. Um, but I was thinking I had some ideas. Maybe you have some ideas you can share with me. I had some ideas like we could use art therapy to do a kind of inner child ritual. People
Hmm.
love those like sip and paint events. I'm like, we could do that. Everybody paint your trauma out and then
Yeah.
share. That could be a fun way to get people together and have something to do. Maybe we need bra fitting parties for women. Get out here and let's crack open a couple of bottles of wine, and then just with a group of people who say, hey, this is going to get intimate, we're going to talk about each other's boobs, just get with it. Get comfortable, because we're going to get weird. Maybe something
Yeah.
like that.
I love the idea of psychedelics sort of being a rite of passage, just because I think that it does have the ability to offer someone a therapeutic experience that is much more transformative than talk therapy or other healing modalities. However, I do think that it's really important for psychedelics to be explored responsibly, and for the timing needs to be really important. And I also think, like, the timing for the individual, like, where are you mentally and emotionally before you decide to take psychedelics? And then the other thing, I really think it's important to have someone who is a trauma informed psychedelic sitter if you're going to do something like that, because it can be dangerous. The other thing that I think is important to consider too is, like, yeah, I think it would be cool to have a ritual of, like, sharing your psychedelic experience, once you've done it. Um, the other thing is that, art therapy, almost all kinds of therapy, I think, need to be explored with the help of someone who is trained in that particular healing modality, to prepare
Mhm.
people mentally and emotionally for what they might experience, and also as a resource afterwards if something really problematic comes up. Because, speaking from experience, healing from complex PTSD and going through many different healing modalities and doing a lot of research on my own outside of therapy as well. Sometimes I would have really unexpected reactions to something that seemed really simple. And sometimes those reactions would take me down for a few days. And so I always needed to have a resource for, like, where do I go if I start going down this path of research or reading, and it re-traumatizes me. So I think a
Mhm.
lot of these things are super important. I think the community aspect of it is super important too. But I just would always want to have, a resource of, like, a professional clinician available or something like that, or at least for prep work or whatever.
Right. That's a good thought. So it's almost like if it were to go to a place where you do, well, even if you weren't doing psychedelics, like you're saying, even if it was just meditation and guided meditation and or art therapy, you'd almost need a luminary, which is what we call our order of missionaries, who is a clinician, who is somebody who is
Right.
trained and certified, who is going to say, look, some of this you're going to do tonight, some of this work you're going to do now, but most of the work you're going to do later. Like that
Yeah.
experience I had, that psilocybin trip, I didn't have
Mhm.
that experience while I was on the trip. I had
Right.
it in the couple of days following. I had another one I haven't talked about. I think you and I maybe have talked about, where I met my mother. I met
Yeah.
my mother before she had me, which is half of the DNA in my body, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, and
But that
I
happened after the actual experience, right?
that's right, after the
Yeah.
trip. When I would meditate in the days following. The days after I would meditate, after I would take do the shrooms,
Mhm.
like for about 4 days, The meditations were very sweet, very intense. And I'm convinced I did most of the work in the days following the
Mm.
psilocybin trip. I didn't even know that was a thing until I brought it up to my partner, who's like, "Yeah, Joe, that's how this works." And I'm like, "Really? Nobody talks about it." I thought I was going to have like some experience while we were on the shrooms, and we had
Yeah.
an experience. Oh man, we had an experience, but
Yeah.
not all of that is fit to share with people. I still
Sure.
think
Especially not
it's
on YouTube.
right, right. I, s- I saw some things. I did some things. Some things were done to me. I liked all of
There you
it.
go. There you go.
But but having a trip sitter is like very important to that. So it's like that's like part of it is like making sure that you have the right proportion of people who are not altered to people who
Right.
are altered. So that's an
Right.
interesting thing. That's an interesting thing to explore. Another thing that I've thought about is I don't know if you've ever engaged in like a cuddle puddle, or people who just like dopamine rush, just like of getting together and touching each other. As an autistic person, at one of these things, I was like, oh boy, I don't know how I'm going to tell you guys this, but like I'm sensitive about smells, and I'm sensitive about touch, and I'm
Yeah.
sensitive about all this stuff. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to engage. And I thought I thought it was fine, but and I got a lot. I didn't get a lot out of it, but I saw a lot of people getting a lot out of it. And
Yeah.
but again, it's one of those situations where it's such a sensitive and tender thing, because of course you're always going to have the possibility somebody has to be touched on the shoulder and said that's crossing the line of consent. That's
Hmm.
we talked about this. Let's everybody keep the rules, things like this. And being able to do that gently, you almost need like a training on how to do ceremonies like that, because
Hmm.
there's so much inner work that people are
Right.
doing.
Right. And yeah, and any sort of community experience for someone who has been through trauma, especially if their trauma happened in a community experience, it's just so important to do that preparatory work, of really like thinking about the experience and meditating about how you might react in certain ways, and having really good ground rules, really good communication between the group, all of those things. But I think ritual is so important, and I think group ritual is really important too. So yeah, I think you're onto something there for sure, and I think it can be really valuable for a lot of people.
Cool. I had a thought. I don't know where it's going to go, so I thought I'd bounce it off of you, because you're one of the people I trust on this. So I was telling you about this partner I have, Winter, and they told me one night. They said, "What about confessions?" And I was
Mm,
like, "Oh, dear God, no! In the Church of Corahord, no! What? No!" And he said, I sometimes I feel like I would love to just unload on somebody. I'm like, you call me, we unload on each other. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm like, oh.
yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, do you think there's a value in that, being able to have like a conversation in confidence with somebody that you can trust, and who's like in a ministerial role, a pastoral role?
I like the idea of having a like a confession partner, like a trusted friend that you feel like you can unload on. I like the idea of that. I definitely have some religious trauma around a confession with someone who's in an authoritative role in any kind of a church setting.
Same.
I definitely don't like that idea at all. But if it was kind of like, one of the things that I don't know if you know of, Tommy Johnson he's on Instagram as the Tomsters, and he does Friday confessions, and it's just anonymous. And you just go on his page on Fridays, and you can put whatever you want on there. It's totally anonymous, and he usually posts everything that people confess, and sometimes he will post some kind of words of support or something like that. But that has been really healing for me to witness. I have confessed a couple of times, but it's been really healing for me to see the different struggles that other people have. You know, things like, I don't think I'm in love with my boyfriend anymore, and I don't know how to tell him. You know, things like, I really want to try mushrooms, but my partner doesn't, and I'm worried it's going to ruin our relationship. You know, just things like that. Like these are the perseverations that we have that sometimes we're afraid to say out loud. And I think a community where it's safe to do that is great. Like if you can have something similar to that in your community, that would be awesome.
Interesting. It's almost like, and this is a stupid example, but it almost reminds me of Loveline. I remember staying up like, do you remember Loveline? But it was nice to have somebody to hear somebody else say it, and then sometimes it's funny to hear people go, "What exactly is a blowjob?" Because like my boyfriend told me about it, and there was no blowing involved, and so like things like that, you know. And it's like I remember like listening, like, oh my gosh, it is nice to know that I'm not the dumbest one out here, you know. But
I remember somebody saying something like, I met a lesbian couple for the first time. How do lesbians even do it? And then some lesbian answered, with love and tenderness and sweetness, just like you.
Man, unless it's not what you want. I know enough lesbians to know that's not always the case. No, but one of the things that's what was I saying? I was talking to Winter, and I said it's almost like THX 1138, which is the geekiest reference. George Lucas, his first movie, he did a dystopian movie about the future, in a future where everybody's drugged out of their minds by the government, by the state, and into this numb, emotionless state. But then when you felt badly, you would go into a booth, or when you felt guilty, you would go into these booths that would have this hero of 1,000 faces version of Jesus illuminated, and it would just play a recording that said, "Go ahead, blessings of the state upon you. Go ahead. I'm listening. Yes, I understand." And you just tell it whatever you wanted and unload on it. I'm like, it's almost like you're suggesting you could almost have an app that just played that recording at you, and you could just tell it whatever. And he's like, actually, that might not be bad.
Yeah, and then bringing that up makes me think about, I don't know if you might be in the wrong space for this as far as like ages of your children, but some of my older children really loved Blue's Clues. And Steve from Blue's Clues goes on TikTok as an adult, and he just shows up and he just says, "Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. How's it going?" And then he just stands there and goes,
Yep.
Like as if you can just tell Steve everything. And the first time I came across that, I just started bawling because I was thinking of my child who loved Blue's Clues the most. And they were going through a really difficult time when I came across this TikTok. And I imagined this child being able to go back to Steve from Blue's Clues again and tell Steve what was going on in their life. And I just lost it because I was like, that's what these kids this age need. They need somebody who's a familiar, trusted face who they can go back to and say, "Man, where have you been? It's been hard since my childhood. Right. I need somebody like you right now."
Right. Steve, I could have used some clues around here right about now.
Right. Oh man,
yeah, that would be great.
About relationships and not being able to afford to pay rent and not being able to afford a house and dealing with insurance claims and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look, everybody, there's a clue on this malignant narcissist. Oh, look at
that. And that makes me think of Dora the Explorer. Oh my gosh. Have you seen my projection today? Blink, blink, blink.
Can you say deep-seated emotional trauma? But it almost seems like there is a role to being able to tell somebody something intimate that happened to you, that's either a secret that you've been, guarding, keeping for too long. And maybe, you bring up an
Mm,
intriguing idea with this about a confession partner, or like a sharing partner, almost like a trauma bonding kind of person. It's like, let's just have a space and you just let go, let it all out.
yeah,
It's almost like an AA type thing. I hate to even say that, because I think AA is a little bit culty, but then we're a little bit
it
culty,
is a
so
little
who
bit
cares?
culty.
But it's like, having a sponsor almost. It's like, I'll be your buddy. I'll be your confession buddy. You just tell me, you can trust me, right? Call me, talk. Let's talk about it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But,
And for me personally, I don't necessarily need someone to fix it for me, but
mhm.
being able to say it out loud, that was the one thing. When I started going to, I went to an intensive outpatient therapy program for 6 weeks, and it was 12 hours of therapy a week. And it was almost all group therapy, but it was the first time that I was able to say some of the things out loud that happened to me. And there was so much power in releasing those words. And I didn't really realize it until it happened. But I was an opera singer, and so I studied a lot about the human voice and about resonance and about, the fact that our voices vibrate on different frequencies and things like that. And it was the literal vibration. You create vibration in the air when you speak and when you sing. And depending on what you're singing, what language you're singing in, all those things affect the vibration and the frequency. So it's not a woo-woo thing. It's like an actual scientific thing that
Yeah.
the resonance of our voice disturbs the air that is around us. And so when I speak to someone with kindness, with love, with compassion, it's a certain vibration. It's actually a theta vibration that's almost like a state of hypnosis. But if I raise my voice, if I'm angry, if I'm anxious, that vibration goes up really high, and it creates a frequency that disturbs the air in a different way, and it literally hurts people. And so being able to speak my trauma out loud was like releasing all of those vibrations that had been bouncing around in my body. And it was the same time I was reading The Body Keeps the Score. And so I was understanding like the literal release of trauma from the cells. And it's frankly something I'm still working on. I still store tension and tightness in my body unconsciously in a lot of ways, because of things that have happened in my past. And it's like a constant practice that I have to work on to untrain all of that for myself. So I think that like I don't necessarily need somebody to say, let me help you fix that. I just need somebody to listen and to witness it and to say, I hear you. I believe you. That's all.
I understand that entirely. Strangely enough, it was Jack Whalen taught me about that. I don't know if you remember, if you read any Jack Whalen books, but
I read every single one of those
I
stupid
did too.
books.
I did too. They were such shit. What the hell
They
were
were
these?
total crap.
They were so bad. And reading them
Yeah.
now, well, not even reading them now, but listening to Self on the Shelf read them. And, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I used to think these books were so good. Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
God, I used to think he was so wise. But yeah, it was,
Yeah.
what was it? It's like Deborah and what's her bucket, or Kimberly, one of them, where the bishop has to learn to listen to his wife and not say, oh, I'll solve that for you, or I'll do this, or say, did you try this, or did you try
Yeah.
that? But to listen with your heart. And I was like, oh, I just got a nugget from this book. I'm going to be able to use dating. I'm going to know that whenever women talk, and complain about something, they don't actually want you to do anything about it. They just want you to like mirror. And then then you actually get out there and start interacting with people, and they're like, could you do that now, Joe? Do you think you can put it on your to-do list for later? Oh, I'm hearing you say that you want me to do a thing. That must be frustrating to wait for you. It's like, no, wait a minute. Sometimes it's not, guys. Sometimes it's just this.
What I hear you saying is you're frustrated. Yeah, I actually appreciate a lot of that about the just listening, and it's to the point where, now that I am in a healthy relationship, a lot of times, I have to, my partner will start talking about something, and I'll have to say, hold on a second. Am I listening just to understand? Am I listening to validate? Or am I listening to solve? Like, please give me some direction about how I should be responding to what you're saying to me, because I think I have an analytical brain. And so, probably like a lot of men, I go into problem solving mode as soon as somebody starts telling me something. I'm like, okay, give me the details. Let's work this out. I can fix this. And that just doesn't need to happen every time.
Mhm. It's interesting you should say that. I have a friend that I do podcasts with. Her name's Heidi, and her show is called the Unfiltered Rise, and she does conspiracy theory and stuff. And she's a Christian, and it's like we have nothing in common except for that we're both ex-Mormons who like true crime stuff. So, and she's like, Joe, I'm a dude upstairs. Like, I'm a man. I want to talk about. I just want to talk about solving problems, and I'm like, and I found it interesting how many women feel that way, right? They're like, I identify more with men and the way that men think and communicate than I do with women. And how many of them either have had the experience of having to be a single mom, or have had the experience of having to raise siblings when they were young,
Mhm.
or have had the experience of dealing with family members who have substance abuse problems or have substance abuse in their own past.
Mhm.
And it's almost like they have to assume other roles in their life. And it's like, how much of it is, this is your natural voice, this is your natural way of understanding, this is your brain's natural development, and how much of it is a response to trauma? The answer, I think, sometimes maybe it doesn't even really matter, but it's like an amalgamation of that. Some of that is you, some of that is your trauma, which is also just you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
such an
Yes.
interesting mix of, so many different, modalities, so many different emotions, and so many different ideas about how to go about it. I love that you're doing this. I really like that we're exploring the idea of ritual, because I think that is one of those things that, we miss the connection, the community, the ritual. And I think, if you're going to have, a church as you are, it's an important exploration, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you another one that I've been thinking about, and we'll go for a little while longer. I know that I'm keeping you up late. I didn't realize until that you're an hour out there ahead of me. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I'm
but
from the future.
you are from the future. Don't tell me what happens. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Let's shut up. Um, the the thing that I've found interesting, there's been all these instances recently of famous either ex-Mormons or Jack Mormons or people who were excommunicated. We had it wasn't one of the September 6th was passed away in the Mormon church, and
Yeah.
was then like immediately reinducted into the church by being baptized for the dead. And I thought,
Wow.
yeah. And it was like, you don't get to just abuse this person her whole life and then take her back, claim it, and say, but, of course, we can't stop them from doing it. I don't think that it works, but it's almost like the whole trauma that was experienced back in the 90s when they discovered that the Mormons had gotten a hold of these Holocaust, victims' records and started baptizing Holocaust victims into the Mormon church in these baptisms for the dead. And it was hugely traumatic for, I know, right, for all these Jewish families who are like, you're kidding me, right? Like, are you serious right now? And it was a whistleblower from inside the church that informed them on that. It's like, that we've been baptizing Holocaust victims, right? And people, of course, in the church, our response was always, if they don't think that it works, why are they afraid? What are they so upset about? And it was like, it's not that, it's the disrespect. It is the absolute disrespect. And so I was like, it's almost like you need something like Bill Maher's ceremony. When Bill Maher did this unbaptizing ceremony for Ann Romney's father, of all people. Ann Romney's dad. I didn't
Wow.
even know that. Yeah. Yeah. Ann Romney's dad was
Was he a Mormon?
an atheist. He was
Oh,
an
okay. He's an
ex-Mormon.
atheist. Got it.
I think he was ex-Mormon. He was an atheist anyway. And when he passed away, they did his temple work. And right, of course. And so on Bill Maher's show, on Real Time with Bill Maher, they did. He put on like the Fantasia wizard hat that Mickey wears, and did this little unbaptizing ceremony. And I thought, it's almost like we wouldn't do badly to have something like that, to have like an unsealing ceremony that people can do, and ex-Mormons can do, and say, like, just so that it's clear to everybody, I reject the celestial kingdom, I reject the new and everlasting covenant, and these are the names of the people I'm taking with me down to
Outer
be
darkness.
sons of perdition with me. We're all going to outer darkness together. Yeah, that's right. And it's yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's almost like you need something like that, like an unsealing, an unbaptizing that you can do on behalf of deceased loved ones in order to grieve, in order to not be made to grieve again in some cases, right?
Yeah. I actually had a burning ceremony, and I don't know if I've talked about it publicly or not. If I have, it probably was, I don't know. It was probably I think I remember talking about it after one of our Tuesdays with Tim, but I haven't talked a lot about it publicly because I know a lot of people feel a certain type of way about that. But I have to say, it was on Latter Daily Digest. Hi
Right.
there, Latter Daily.
Hey, Jane. Mm-hmm.
It was incredibly cathartic for me. And I didn't realize how much I needed to do it until I did it. And I documented it. I took pictures, I took video. My partner was here. I read my patriarchal blessing for him and then threw it on the fire. It was so healing for me. So I don't know, like if anybody wants to have a burning ritual, we can do that. There were some things that there was one or two things that I didn't burn, that I hung on to, but almost everything else I did, and I'm glad that I did. It was amazing. I highly recommend it to anybody who feels like they need it. And this is the other thing I think is really important to recognize. Every single one of us knows already right now exactly what we need to do to heal. We know it intuitively. A lot of times we stop ourselves from doing it. A lot of times we talk ourselves out of it. We shame ourselves out of it, or we explain it away by saying, "Oh, that seems silly. I shouldn't do that." I think if we get really quiet with ourselves and get really honest with ourselves, a lot of those ideas will come to us. And I think we should pay attention to those,
I love that. Brett Hartley does something like that with her godless spiritual director work. And that's what she was telling me when I was interviewing her. And I was my first conversation about ceremonies for godless people with Jenny Gage. Similarly, I said, I thought, because I got her to come on. Jenny Gage, people who don't know, she runs a channel called Life Take Two. And she and I were talking about, and she's one of the founders of the Church of Korihor and now Second Herald. And she says it's so different from one person to another. because I said,
Mm.
well, we could just like we could do a thing where you just put things into you put all these things that represent your marriage, because like we're doing a divorce ceremony is basically what we're doing,
Mm.
and we're calling it the uncoupling at this point.
Yeah.
And so I said, just put it in like this sacred altar and this bowl, which is like this concrete bowl. It's really nice, fancy concrete bowl, something you would keep, a keepsake. And then you just put all of like your photographs and things like that. You hold them up, say what they mean to you, and how you are releasing this person and the trauma related to your relationship. Break them apart and then put them into this bowl and then pour resin over it and just like
Mm.
cement it and seal it in this transparent resin. And it's like, and then it becomes like a piece of artwork you can display somewhere. It's like, that's my divorce. Did you like it? That's my uncoupling from my a-hole husband, or my a-hole wife, or something like that. And she's like, except that some people don't end it angrily. She's like, I did.
Yeah.
But she's like, but she's like, not everybody does. So
Yeah.
you need like a version for people who do it amicably and a version for people who do it angrily together. I said, well, that's going to be dangerous versus somebody who does it angrily by themselves. And I'm like, so I'm hearing is that an uncoupling is like the opposite of a marriage. It's like
Yeah.
just like a marriage, you pick the songs we're going to sing, you pick how the colors, you pick it's a whole ceremony that's customized for the couple. So the uncoupling has to be the same. And the more that we do this, the more I'm seeing that that's true about all of them. It's true about the chrysalis, which is our celebration for trans people to transition, our chosen family banquets, which has come to replace our coming out ceremony, since pretty much every gay person I have met and talked to has said, I love the energy of what you're doing with this whole idea that we can take coming out back and make it something positive instead of something negative, but just don't. Just coming out is bad. It's a negative thing. And so we're replacing that with the chosen family banquet. But once again, it's going to be like, you almost need like an event planner that's just, and that's what some of our luminaries are going to have to be. It's like, okay, everybody comes in, this is what we're serving. If there's going to be food, if there's going to be, these are the things we need to order. If there's any kind of implements, and then we're going to have to like pre-write, like, here are some suggestions of how it will go, and then modify it as you go. So I feel like we've talked about quite a few good ideas here.
Yeah.
I feel like we definitely agree. There's definitely got to be some group ceremonies, and then some individual or even paired ceremonies.
Yeah.
And that they're going to have to involve having at least the phone number or a scheduled follow-up with a trained therapist who can walk you through, what did you learn? What did you get out of it? Do you think that needs to be a therapist, or could it be like a spiritual director, like Brett Farley?
Yeah, I think it could be a spiritual director. I know there's a lot of certified healers out there. I know there are a lot of people who do trauma-informed coaching and things like that. So I do think it's important to have somebody who knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about, has some good resources to plug people into. And I think that ceremony ritual is a really good thing. I also think that there doesn't necessarily have to be like, just like, these are the rituals that we do and only these rituals. Like, maybe it just needs to be individual to like, what kind of ceremony would serve you right now? Like, what kind of ceremony would you like to do? I know somebody in the chat just said, Hannah Walker, I just turned 60. I need to do a ceremony to acknowledge I'm an elder. I love that. Having a ceremony just for whenever you feel like it's important for you to do that, for whatever it is that you want to celebrate or mark or, turn into something significant.
You almost need like a blank rite of passage ceremony that somebody can fill in with what is expressing from inside them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I loved it. I don't know if you follow Mormon stories or not, or if you know John Larson at all, but I loved when he, his very last Mormon stories that he did, where he said that he is leaving ex-Mormonism. And it really just hit me because it was exactly at the same time that I was like, I don't want to be here forever. I don't want to only talk about ex-Mormonism. I don't want that to be the rest of my life. I already gave 45 years of my life to Mormonism. I'm not doing that. And he just basically said he was becoming an ex-Mormon. And I think what an awesome ceremony that would be, to have a ritual around that. Like, let's mark and celebrate anything in your life that you feel is it's significant enough that you want to mark it with a ritual,
Yeah, because I mean, this is a conversation we've had before about. I've talked on Gene's show with you about I needed a funeral for God, and it was a burning ceremony, basically, like you're saying, but where I could burn, like my mission call or my patriarchal blessing, which I may still have around here somewhere or something, but looking into the face, if you will, of my Heavenly Father to say one last time, this is what needs to come out of me, what I need to say. Mm-hmm. And I told that to Brett Hartley, and I'm like, am I crazy in thinking there needs to be an official ceremony for this? And she said, no, but she said, if it's what you need, then your inner child will speak it and you'll know it. Yeah, and exactly. She says, for what it's worth, I do those all the time, funerals for God. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, I have clients who ask me, it's like one of the main things people have asked for is I need to be able to bury God and the God that all my trauma is based around and set them down. And, it's like I told people, and I'm like, Mormons will laugh when I say this, or God believers, Christians and so forth will laugh. And I'll say, listen, this is what you need to understand. My God was not minor to me. Like a lot of people who are still believers in God, they think, oh, well, you left your religion, you left God, you became an atheist. You must never have really believed. This whole false conversion narrative, I think, is one of the most dangerous things about religion. Yeah. And I say, listen, my Heavenly Father died and no one said anything. And it was so traumatizing. It was like my own father, like my flesh and blood father had died, and we couldn't talk about it. And I had no one to tell. I had no one to talk to. And the thing is that, we all know angry atheists, and we all know angry agnostics, and people even use militarized language to describe us: militant atheists, strident atheists, and angry atheists. The same with ex-Mormons, angry ex-Mormons. Why are they so angry? They can leave the church, but they can't leave it alone. And it's like, right. But it's like, on one side, it's like, F you guys, right? But on the other side, it's like, they are pointing out something we know about ourselves, right? There is even among ex-Mormons, we call it the angry phase. But there has to be an acknowledgement that at a certain phase of our lives, and I recently read James Fowler. This is something, again, Brett Hartley turned me on to. There's this guy named James Fowler, a theologian, who says that there was a phase in life, usually around young adulthood, or midlife, where your faith in God is based on justice entirely. And if God, right? Interesting, right? It's like, and so if God is unjust in that moment, or the church is unjust in that moment, that's when they walk away. That's when they reject God altogether. They drop faith altogether. I was like, holy crap, this is speaking to what's going on with me and with so many people I know. It's like we have this unresolved trauma, and there's no defined passage for take your trauma. We're going to walk with it here, and you're going to set it down over here. And it's almost like, this is why I say atheists and agnostics, for as much as people hate us or pity us, we are the most spiritually neglected group in the world, not because anybody meant to neglect us, but because our own lack of spiritual community and our own rejection of words like church, ministry, spiritual, and makes it so that we don't get the kind of healing that we need.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think anger is shamed so much in the post-religious space, and post-religious people are shamed so much for their anger. But anger is a natural part of the grieving process. And if we aren't allowed to express our anger in healthy ways, we remain stuck and unable to move on from that grief. We stay stuck in that grieving process. And I identify with it so much as a ex-Mormon woman, because it's women, especially in the church, are told not to be angry. And there's the trope of the nagging wife, that I went into marriage saying, I will never be the nagging wife. And it ended up, stunting me in so many ways, because I wouldn't stand up for myself. I wouldn't ask for what I needed. I wouldn't communicate in healthy ways. And so, not being able to have a safe way to express anger and a safe outlet for anger really kept me stuck in grieving in every single system that I left, in every single abusive situation that I endured. Not being able to express that anger, it re-traumatized me over and over. So I think that maybe there needs to be an anger ritual,
Oof,
not just for the ex-religion, but for any circumstance that you went through where you were treated unjustly and you didn't get a chance to express the anger that went along with that. I still feel a lot of anger at certain situations. And, I remember talking to my therapist. I had a really excellent EMDR therapist. He still is my therapist, because I could call him anytime and be like, hey, I need to come in. He'd be like, cool, when can I see you? Sure. But I remember, I had processed through all the trauma on my list. I felt like I was done. And then I got really, really activated and angry by this situation. And I called him up and I was like, man, I thought we processed this already. Like, I don't understand why I am so blown up over this. And he was like, look, you're never going to like it when there's a power differential and somebody gets treated unfairly in that situation. That makes you a good human being. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, you don't need to process trauma. This is not trauma. This is just you being a human being that is unhappy when someone in a position of power takes advantage of a marginalized person. Like, that's being a human being. Like, you're gonna have to deal with that. I'm like, but I don't get this, what I'm feeling, like after sort of working through it, he's like, that's just anger. You're just angry. It's okay to be angry. And I was like, oh, thank God. thank the great flying spaghetti monster. I can just be angry and it's okay. And right. Now when I hear people's stories and I hear, whatever, certain things in the news, or I, talk about my stupid cousin's case, I get angry. And all I have to do is say, this makes me so angry. And just being able to say it out loud that's all I need. Sometimes I do have to go into my room and shut the door and go, but that does it most of the time, but yeah, it is, maybe there needs to be an anger ritual of some kind of anger release. I loved, there's a lady in Washington somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, who does angry yoga. And
great.
she welcomes beverages and other, items of relaxation as you need them. And it's like, take a deep breath in and scream the F word as loud as you can as we do the warrior pose. It's like, it's just the angry yoga thing. It's that there's something about like that primal screaming combined with the physical release, the stretching movements and all those things that like is very healing and cathartic for people.
Yeah. You mentioned a few things there that are really good ideas that are just coming to me back to me now that I thought, that I'll think for a moment like, oh yeah, and then I'll forget. But EMDR is scientifically validated now. The people get good effects with it.
Oh, it
Also,
literally saved my life. I would not be here right now if I hadn't found EMDR.
really,
Yep,
wow,
100%.
that's good. See, no, this is why you ask people who know. The other thing, and I think that it's very closely connected to EMDR, from what I understand, at least when it comes to like pairing up archetypes and things like this, is internal family systems. I don't know if
Yes,
you know that. Right.
love
It's
it.
a
Did a whole episode on that. Love it.
Yeah, people do it and get so much out of it. That's another great one that we could be incorporating all these elements into like custom experiences, either for groups and also
Mm,
for individuals. It's
yeah.
almost like we need a spiritual directory of our own. It's like, it's like we need our own
A
army of
directory of rituals.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's almost like you need to be able to like go in, like put in, I'm looking for a practitioner or somebody who, a luminary who can do this, who has training in these, and then like have a handful of luminaries like, respond to it and say, if you're looking to have this experience, I can facilitate that for you. And then just have them customize it and build it for you. I
Yeah.
think we're getting a lot closer to what this will look like.
Yeah.
So I like that. This is a good conversation so far. Um, is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we haven't talked about yet, Megan?
Well, you had talked about the sorry, the word is escaping my brain right now because ADHD is a real thing that infects my brain. The
Same.
Carl Sagan meditation.
Oh yeah, pale blue dot.
What did you call it? What
Well, we
did you
call it
call it?
overview. We're calling it overview.
Overview. Yeah,
Mhm,
thank you. Yeah, I was
mhm.
trying to remember what I'm going to write it down because I like that.
Yeah.
But I had mentioned that I have a really similar meditation, and I would be happy to take everyone through it if you are interested.
I'm totally interested.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So I when I do this meditation, I usually just lay flat on the bed and I put my hands here because when I used to do chakra meditation during my intensive outpatient therapy, the color that resonated the most with me was green, which is the heart chakra. And so I put my hands where I can feel my heartbeat and I breathe deeply and I close my eyes. I do a specific breathing exercise where I breathe in through my nose for 4 counts, I hold it for 6 counts, and then I breathe out through my mouth for 8 counts. And I try to do it as slowly as I can. And I continue that breathing exercise until I do it slow enough that I really feel grounded and I feel like that is the right rhythm for my body. So it takes a while sometimes to get in there. But I just put my hands on my chest, I close my eyes, and I imagine myself going outside of my house and just floating up above my house and looking at the roof of my house from the outside. And I imagine all of my people safe in my house. My children are there, my puppies are there. All the people that I love and care about are there in my house. And I imagine the colors of warmth radiating outside of all of those people together, the warmth and the heat radiating from the love that comes from all those people that I love and care about. I imagine those colors radiating outside of the house and creating this warm, beautiful bubble of color that is healing and protective for everyone who is inside. And then I imagine myself going even farther out and going up higher so that I can see my entire neighborhood. And I see all the places where I've had beautiful memories with people that I love and care about. I see the classroom, where I used to teach. I'm going to cry. It just always happens. It's okay. Sorry, I haven't done this in a while. So it's lots of emotions. I imagine all the beautiful souls that I encountered there. And I imagine the little bakery that 2 of my kids used to work at and the delicious treats that came out of that place. And I imagine the little taco shop that's down the street, where I know the owner and he greets me by my first name, even if I haven't been in months. And I imagine the gym that I worked out at, the places that I had the most physical release. And I imagine all of those places as having their own specific color, their own specific warmth, and their own specific protective and healing bubble. And I see all of those different colored dots all around the map of the little neighborhood where I spend my days. And then I zoom out even farther and I look at the entire country and I see more colored dots for all of the places that the people that I'm not physically close to live. And I see more colored dots of all the places where I once lived as a child. And all the beautiful memories that I had. And the painful ones too. But I imagine that the colors from the beautiful memories absorb the little dents in the landscape from the painful ones. And then I zoom out even more. And I look at the earth from space. And I see all those colors exuding from the places and the people that I love. And I remember that I'm made of stardust. And I just lay back with my arms open. And I imagine all of the particles of stardust in my body connecting with all of the particles of stardust in the entire universe. Because there are pieces of me in every piece of the universe. And every piece of the universe has a place in me. And then I remember that every single person who has ever lived on the planet or who ever will live on the planet has pieces of that stardust inside them too. And it reminds me that I'm connected to the human family, that the whole of the human family lives inside me, and that there are pieces of me inside every person in the human family. We are all connected. We all belong. And we all call the same place home. And when I say that word home, I'm right back in front of my house. And I see the colors, and I walk in the door to the people that I love. And I remind myself that it's not just my home anymore. It's the whole earth. It's the whole human family. And then the colors slowly dim back down. And they come right inside me to where my hands are on my heart. And I remember that connection will never leave me because it's inside me. That belonging will always be with me no matter where I go, no matter who I'm with. And that I have the capacity and the power inside of me to have great love for every single person in the human family because I have great love for myself. And then I can rest.
Man, Megan, that was so powerful. Like I feel it so strongly right now. I mean, you've given me such a gift right now with that. And it cost you vulnerability, and it cost you time, and it's late out there where you are. But just having that recorded here where people can experience it is going to benefit so many people in your network, in your viewership, and in ours. And I just want to thank you and honor this journey that you're on, and thank you for that gift because it's beautiful. And you've healed me with this. I experienced something amazing right there, and I had no idea you were going to hit me with this beautiful thing. So I just want to thank you for that. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
You're welcome.
You guys, I mean, seriously, once we get overview off and going, we got to get Megan to come in here and record one for us. That'd be such a blessing to us. And I use that word very, very carefully, but it's like so much more than any priesthood blessing I ever had in my life.
Oh,
It's amazing. The power in you, Megan, and the
well,
wisdom. So,
thank you.
well, you guys, we should probably get going up out of here. Otherwise, we'll, Megan and I will talk all night. We've done it before. We both have partners and kids and lives. But I want to thank you again, Megan, for being on the show and for having me on yours. Thank you for sharing your audience with me. It sounds like you got really good people there.
My people are the best. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate connecting with you, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And congrats to us both on having made it to an hour and a half
Hey.
without ever saying the name.
Yes.
She is Megan. She is more than somebody's cousin.
Yeah, that's so true. After the memorial service, I started asking people, please just call me Tylee and JJ's cousin. But it has its time and its place, and that's fine. And hey, Krusha, Difficult Research is here, and she likes to say Lori Hoare.
She is also a family member, right? Is that do I understand that correct?
Yeah, she's Kay and Larry's daughter. So yeah, we are adopted sisters. We've adopted each other.
I love that. Well, you guys, let's get up out of here. But thank you very much for having me on your program, Megan. And I hope that we'll see you at more sermons, and that you'll come back on the show again.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. Thank you so much for this idea and for having me. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right, friends. Until next time, let the light of reason flash within you.